Coming up on the stage, I want to make sure these guys are ready to rock and roll. We've got Shinobi, who is going to be bringing up a wonderful panel. And we're going to be talking about, these guys are going to be talking about stablecoins. Bitcoin, is it going to be the Bitcoin gateway or the distraction to nowhere? So Shinobi, why don't you come on up with all these wonderful folks, and everybody give a round of applause and let's get going. Woohoo! Thanks, Shinobi. All right, hey Paolo, rock and roll, brother. All right, rock and roll.
I'm sitting here by you.
Well, hello everybody. This is definitely one of those topics that's kind of divisive depending on who you're talking to. But really glad to have this cast of characters here to discuss it. We have Paolo from Bitfinex and Tether, Nicolas from Galoy, and then Sam from, I'm sorry, I'm kind of blanking on the name.
Doseki.
Doseki. They work on a proof of reserves kind of application framework to make sure that people don't pull an FTX like just happened. But yeah, I guess stablecoins is one of those dirty things that just got built out of pure necessity in this space in the very beginning, because it was incredibly difficult for a lot of the exchanges and businesses to really have consistent access to fiat services, which is obviously something you need unless we get to that magical place where everybody's just buying and selling in a circular economy with Bitcoin. So I guess to start, I kind of want to just get your guys' thoughts on what are the risks in terms of incentive distortion in your minds of a platform that a stable coin is issued on? Like we saw with the transition in Ethereum to proof of stake that USDC kind of just said, we're only going to support the proof of stake fork. We're not going to honor or issue anything on the proof of fork split during that event. What do you guys see as the risks present to a platform like Bitcoin if stable coins were to be directly issued on the Bitcoin blockchain? And like what are kind of the risks there versus the positives? If anybody just wants to jump in, I'll leave you guys to anarchy.
Hey, I can start. Well, a little bit of history. Actually, Tether, the first stablecoin, was born in 2014 and actually used Omin layer, that is a color coin layer on top of Bitcoin. So after a few years, was end of 2017, there was the ICO boom, and then the bubble exploded. There was more and more demand to move stable coins towards a blockchain that would have lower gas fees or lower costs and faster settlement times. And that's not, in a certain sense, you can see this thing in two ways, right? Of course, Bitcoin is the most secure blockchain ever built, right? So there is no doubt about that. On the other side, you have anyway a stable coin that is centralized money, right? So don't think that just because stable coins are running, at least the bigger stable coins are running on a decentralized transport layer, they are decentralized. Stable coins like Tether, like USDC, are centralized anyway, right? So in a certain sense, if in the worst case scenario, if there are issues, everyone will come back to the issuer, to the central issuer, to ask for help, to freeze, unfreeze, or recover funds and whatever. So in a certain sense, it's not that bad if we don't pollute the Bitcoin main chain with transactions that are carrying something that anyway is inherently centralized.
Yeah, I think the path first to like dollarization is seems obvious, mandatory for many countries. I can give two examples. The first one is El Salvador. Now, El Salvador is on the Bitcoin standard and on the USD standard. It's dual standard for now. But if you think about the history of El Salvador, 20 years ago, the country gave up their own currency and they went to use the US dollar to have more stability, right? 20 years ago, there was no Tether, there was no stablecoin, and so it's like plugging into the traditional financial system. But you can see how even a country that want to eventually adopt Bitcoin, maybe they'll first go to like a stablecoin using the US dollar, because it's probably less disruptive in the short term than go full on Bitcoin. And right now the countries that have adopted Bitcoin, El Salvador, like it's a dual currency. It's not Bitcoin only. So I was discussing with a friend yesterday from Lebanon that is here, and he was also explaining me how there is super high inflation, almost hyperinflation in Lebanon. And you see probably all this video on Twitter where like people are going to the bank and asking their money, and the money doesn't want to give them, so it's a very bad situation. And Eli, my friend, was telling me like in Lebanon, like businesses, they don't accept the local currency anymore. Like they are asking to have dollar, and basically they're forced into dollar, right? The currency is just collapsing. They cannot live anymore with their own currency. The only way for survive to them is to ask for either cash or USDT. This is the two ways that they want to get paid. And I think whether it's good for Bitcoin to have a stablecoin on top of Bitcoin, or I don't know. But one thing I'm for sure is that most countries or organizations that will eventually adopt Bitcoin, they probably go to a stage where they need to have something that is better than their own currency, and it probably starts with something like a USDT today. Not to answer your question, like about the incentive. I mean, as Paolo said, right, like stablecoin today are centralized. So what are the incentives to use Bitcoin? It's a good question. From my perspective, I think there is some super utility to think about having USD over Lightning, some form of a USD over Lightning, because we want this payment system that Lightning is, that is instant and can move money around at the speed of light. And eventually, whenever the money is being received, we might want to convert it into a form of dollar, because maybe an organization wants to use this payment system, Lightning, but they don't necessarily want to be using Bitcoin, the assets, at the beginning. They don't want the volatility, right? They want the insurance of the fact that Lightning is an instant settlement. But if the price go up, and they have their expense in dollar, like it's an issue for them. So I think there is a need to think about how to have a dollar equivalent system that is plugged to Lightning. Yeah.
The incentives for me are more, I think about it more financial and cultural incentives. So, as you indicated, Paolo, like we've been able to issue assets on Bitcoin for a while, but it hasn't gained the same sort of critical mass that other blockchains have, like Ethereum and Solana. In 2017, I remember at one of these conferences, Giacomo said that the benefit of not having, and he was presenting RGB at that time, the benefits of not having sort of like token issuance on Bitcoin is that in 2017 we could say, look, all this shit is happening, and we actually have nothing to do with it. It's happening somewhere else. And I think a lot of that is because of, well, some of it's like the dev tooling. The dev tooling isn't nearly as easy on Bitcoin as it is on Ethereum, for example. Maybe Taro changes that. And then some of it's like the cultural financial stuff, I think, as well. The way I understand Ethereum and sort of token issuance and development on Ethereum and other blockchains, but Ethereum specifically, is that a lot of people made a lot of money in the pre-sale. Those people then made their own tokens on Ethereum, did an ICO, and it's basically just this money sort of kind of slushing around, and FTX is a good example of this sort of financial cesspool. I think it's more difficult to do that on Bitcoin. This isn't like a moralistic claim, it's just a little bit more financially honest, or just has been historically. So I think it's the cultural element of we haven't had a good shitcoin culture, or just a good token development culture. And there's the financial aspect as well, where it may not really make as much sense as it would in other blockchains because it's not as corrupt.
Well, I mean, you know, I kind of want to call back to a little historical example, like looking at what Nicolas was saying. Like, you know, there is this need in a lot of people's lives to have something that is kind of offering the utility of Bitcoin, but without the inherent price volatility, just because of how their local currency is, you know, not doing the best. It's hyperinflating, getting to that situation. But I think on the topic of stablecoins, a lot of people, particularly those not really familiar with the financial markets and just how trading different assets works, I don't think we would be here where we are today in terms of the Bitcoin market without stablecoins. Like, Tether was created because of how difficult it was to move fiat between different exchanges through the banking systems for people to actually trade Bitcoin, the asset. And without that mechanism or that rail to be able to do that, the market in pricing Bitcoin itself would have been completely chaotic. And so I think like what we're kind of seeing in terms of this desire to use things like Tether or USDC more directly in commerce or as a financial tool, it's kind of just the next extension of that dynamic. Like, it's just hard to interface and get access to tools in the financial system, so we're building kind of the middle ground between Bitcoin and the legacy financial system and just trying to extend that.
Yeah, I think that, so this is a really good point, right? So in 2014, when Tether was created, I'm not sure how many of you guys remember or were into Bitcoin at that time, but 2004, in the end of 2013, if I'm not wrong, was the first time Bitcoin reached $1,000. And so, and there were not many exchanges running around, right? There was OKCoin, there was Bitfinex, there was Bitstamp, and Coinbase and Kraken. And the problem is that all these exchanges were geographically distributed. And in order to send money, you know, one of the key activities of a trader is arbitrage. So it means that you have to sell Bitcoin on the exchange where the price is higher and buy back on the exchange where the price is lower. So in this way, you shrink the spreads, because for any mature market, you cannot have a platform, a trading platform where the price is $1,000, another platform where the price is $1,200 and so on. So in order to keep the spreads closed, you have to have arbitrageurs. But if you have to wait for 5 days for an international wire, I mean, the entire your entire strategy as a trader falls apart. So that's why the really simple but brilliant idea of Tether was why we don't reuse the same technology, brilliant technology that Bitcoin is using, blockchain, in order to move dollars. So Tether is a dollar on a blockchain. So I think that every one of us, I think many of us would love to see soon hyper-Bitcoinization. So it means that we are stopping to live in the fiat standard and we start living in Bitcoin standard, where all the services are priced in Bitcoin. The problem is that this is something that cannot happen from one day to another. So this is a journey rather than a rush, right? So you have to slowly make the case and showcase to the people throughout also the worst and catastrophic events that can happen in the financial system, but also in, with geopolitics and so on, that Bitcoin is the only thing that throughout all these events will keep striving, right? So I think that stable coins are a way to bring people into more digital money with less intermediaries, right? Because money is already digital since a long time, but the problem is that although it's digital, the current financial system is full of intermediaries. So stable coins are a step towards showing to people that not all the intermediaries are necessary, right? So we start with that, and the more people know is about education, that they can move more towards and understand more Bitcoin.
Yeah, in terms of infrastructure, something we are developing at Galloy is called StableSats. And the idea of StableSats is that basically StableSats is a result of feedback that we got operating in El Salvador with the Bitcoin Beach wallet, where people love the use of Lightning, but it was launched, 2 years ago, but it gained traction last year. But as we know, the price of Bitcoin going down, or a lot of businesses were hesitant to start accepting Bitcoin because if they have to pay their expense in USD, but they receive money in BTC, there is a mismatch in currency, and that creates an issue for them, because then if they cannot pay their bill, it's, they will not want to accept Bitcoin, right? And so StableSats is the idea to say, okay, can we basically think about, okay, your checking account should be maybe your dollar account, and your BTC account should be your saving account, and how can we create a USD account? And the way we operate today is that we are using derivative market, and we create short position to basically be delta neutral. And it's still a centralized solution, so it's still like there is a centralized exchanges in the middle. But one of the benefits of this, maybe if we compare with USDT, is that we can use exchanges that doesn't necessarily have to have USD payment rail or traditional payment rail. And so it's a way to create synthetic USDs that are independent of traditional banking system, which is maybe one way to be a bit more robust in terms of like being censorship resistant and being independent, and having an independent stack if we want to use Bitcoin and Lightning. And the result of this development is really the feedback from the market that in El Salvador, but like probably any other developing country that is starting to touch about this Bitcoin technology. Like they want to have the possibility to remove the volatility, and this is really what a StableSat is about. Interestingly, like there is no token in StableSat. It's just you have a USD equivalent balance in your wallet, but like there is no. We don't create like we don't want to basically think about, okay, how Ethereum has been maybe captured by USDC in some aspect, as we see with a move with proof of stake. The fact that there is no token here make it, I guess, for us better overall. And so yeah, it's something that we like.
Yeah, if the question was about sort of demand for dollars, it's clear everyone wants dollars globally. Lebanon's a great example. I think the coolest thing about stablecoins and stablecoin issuers are this like free banking era that Yakes talks about, that we're sort of, that has been going on for a while. You guys have issued Tether in 2014. But generally, I think it's really interesting. I think we have this new renaissance of free banking where individual entities can issue assets, and I'm sure we'll have our own self-regulatory requirements around that as we mature. I'm honestly most curious about are you guys seeing demand for other fiat stablecoins, or is it just dollars for the main part? Do people want yen? Do people want ruble stablecoins? Do people care?
So we have different flavors. We have Tether Euro as well, and Tether Mexican Pesos, and Tether Gold, right? So the gold-backed stablecoin is the second most popular after Tether USDT. I think the gold-backed stablecoin has, though, a really different use case from the others, right? So I talk to many Bitcoiners, right? I'm one of them, and I think that there is some sort of discrepancy on what people think about gold and the actual meaning of what we are doing with Tether Gold. So with Tether Gold, I think is what we want to provide is a way to not compete with Bitcoin. So Bitcoin has already won against gold, right, for transportability and so on. But we are seeing more and more people that are thinking, okay, dollar is better than the Turkish lira, dollar is better than the Argentina pesos, but what is better than the dollar that is not yet Bitcoin? Because, for example, for trading pairs or for like risk diversification, people want something else. So we're seeing more and more people interested to Tether Gold. So that is basically the other winner that we have among our stablecoins. But actually, no one cares about Tether Euro, I can say, right? So that's it, right? So because really, the euro has the same problems in terms of inflation, money printing that the dollar has, but is much more fragmented, right? So the truth is that the European Union is, although is a union, is more fragmented than what is the United States, right? So there is that fear of fragmentation is priced into the euro. So, and the fact that the US always push for the dollarization award, of course, they have a first mover advantage in that. So really no other currency apart Tether Gold and USDT are actually succeeding. And I don't see that changing anytime soon.
So on this path for hyper-Bitcoinization, is the dollar going to win, basically? Because my biggest thing that I can't figure out, honestly, is whether hyper-Bitcoinization comes at the expense of dollar hegemony. I think the answer is yes, but I might be missing something.
You literally read my mind, Sam. This is exactly where I wanted to push the last kind of 10 minutes. So what do you guys think about the potential that Bitcoin and the synergy with dollar stablecoins effectively follows this pattern where, as you see local currencies, local economies across the world that aren't doing so well imploding, and Bitcoin coming in kind of as the spearhead, either actively exacerbating or just following the implosion of other currencies, has the dollar piggyback on top of that. And instead of seeing hyper-Bitcoinization, we effectively have a lot of people call the dollar milkshake theory, where the dollar rides in on the back of Bitcoin, and while Bitcoin does become present and a huge part of use or the economy, the dollar benefits from that as well, with that synergy of you have Bitcoin as something you can speculate on, potentially save in the long term. But when the local currency implodes, people also want dollars to use for short-term economic activity to have something more stable. And so, is there the potential that stable coins actually delay or potentially prevent the possibility of something like hyper-Bitcoinization? And you just wind up in that dual system world where you have the dollar and Bitcoin and maybe a few other strong currencies like the yen, the yuan. What are your thoughts on things playing out that way?
I think the path to using dollar is inevitable, but now the question is like, will people stop here, or will they go to Bitcoin? Right? Like, will they make their path? And of course, our job should be making it as easy as possible to, when you're using, some stablecoin, like you want to use, Bitcoin, because you understand the value property of Bitcoin, you can self-custody it. Like, there's a lot of things with Bitcoin that stablecoin doesn't have. I'm also curious about, how the US will. I mean, for now, the US is, I think, they like stablecoin, right? They like the fact that they can export the dollar, and it continue to give the hegemony to the dollar for the time being. I'm also curious whether at some point, if everybody start using the dollar around the world, like, will they be happy with stablecoin, or will they want to introduce some form of a CBDC? And I think that could be one risk to think about, right? I'm not sure how they think about it, but I saw a tweet today that said that, hey, like, we're among bank in New York, like, we're experimenting with this digital payment system. It sounds like a CBDC format. And maybe if, CBDC is being used more and more, maybe the moving from this to Bitcoin will be harder. Maybe the government will want to, that people is being kept in this environment. I'm not sure, but I just see this as a risk. I don't know what necessarily the solution is beyond, trying to provide the best tool for people to understand what Bitcoin is, and when they are on this, stable sats, USD, dollarized economy, that they have an incentive to try to move to Bitcoin as fast as really with education, right? I think it starts here.
So my feeling after many discussions also with the US and so on, I think that there is so something like Tether actually is helping the hyper-dollarization of the world, right? So I think that the US doesn't like too much stable coins in their own country. So for that, they would prefer a CBDC. But from outside, right, is to me at least a little bit unrealistic that US CBDC could be used outside of the US, right? So for that, privately issued stablecoins are, a good ally for this hyper-dollarization. So, of course, myself being a Bitcoiner, you have to live this dual life where, from one side, you are providing a good service to all the emerging markets that are seeing their national value being, national currency being destroyed by the day, right? So Turkish lira lost 80% one year to the other. And people are using USDT not because they want to speculate, it's just they are like, is a lifeline. And they are still a little bit scared of the volatility of Bitcoin. So, Bitcoin went through from the all-time highs down to, lost around 60, 70%. And these people have basic needs, right? So they don't have a lot of money. They need to save for their children. They need to send their children to study abroad. So their primary necessity is trying to, preserve the wealth that they accumulated working hard. So, and there is also the need for Bitcoin to become a bit more stable, to be used more and more in the day-to-day life of people. So that requires time. Bitcoin is 14 years old, so we should give it time. So of course we are all in a rush to make sure that that will happen as soon as possible, but I think will be kind of absurd to think that it can happen in the next 10 years. So it will. So I think that there could be a period where the dollarization of the world will increase, but keep in mind that geopolitical events can happen to bring that really quickly down, and people at that point might all go to something that is extremely hard, completely or globally recognized like Bitcoin. So Bitcoin needs to be established in the next 10 years as the most solid currency in the world, right? The technology currency, the currency for the worst case scenario. So that's what I like about Bitcoin, right? So whatever happens, you have your Bitcoins. So then, of course, no one is rooting for something bad to happen, but the history teaches us that something eventually bad will happen. And so Bitcoin is the ultimate solution for that.
I take sort of a how funny approach to these things. Like, I don't think most people are going to be using Bitcoin in the future day to day. I think we're going to have a free banking system on top of Bitcoin that's backed by Bitcoin reserves with some form of stable coins or just some assets issued against it. So I don't think it comes at the expense of hyper-Bitcoinization. I think stable coins are just part of the journey, part of our journey or path. So there's that bit. So I don't think it hurts it in any way. But I think, and this is more geopolitical, there's demand for dollars now. I just wonder if that continues. I guess there isn't a real reason why it wouldn't continue. The main thing really is if we keep sanctioning foreign reserves, I mean, those countries are going to do something about that. They're going to have their own currency system, whatever they may do. It may not be effective. It may just be like two sort of systems in one earth. But I think that's an important point to keep in mind. I don't really think it's a given necessarily. I think there's a lot of geopolitical factors that are involved. But I don't think that stable coins hurt Bitcoin or sort of like keep us from getting to this hyper-Bitcoinized world, that this Bitcoin eschatology that we all dream of.
All right, well, I guess we're kind of running down on the wire, but each of you guys have maybe a last 20, 30-second thought on the whole topic. Try to boil down everything we've been talking about? No, nothing? Well, I guess I could stand up and be a smartass. Everybody, Tether, don't verify, just trust. They are one of the greatest stablecoin issuers on the planet. It's worked smoothly for many years, even with the US government looking at every way they possibly can to screw with them. So, Tether, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hola, hola. Oh, this is amazing. This is the first time using this mic. Okay, so from my experience working with USDT stablecoin.
Can you speak up, please, or put nearby?
Right, hold it like this.
Like a singer? All right. So from my experience working with okay. I'm sorry, I have no experience with this. So basically, my question is, I work with people mostly in emerging countries where their local currency is just dying, and they don't have access to the paper USD, and their main scapegoat is maybe like the only solution they have is USDT. However, there is a problem. They don't custody their own assets. They rely on I'd say Binance, because that's the only option. They don't control their assets. If Binance goes nuts, they lose everything. And I believe this is one of the main risks of USDT and stablecoins in general. So do you have any, I would say, idea or...
So if I can answer. So I think that basically what you're describing, right, is also the risk of FTX, what happened and so on. So to us, so we as Tether, we are the first ones to say, look, first of all, Tether is centralized itself. Again, just runs on a decentralized transport layer. And nowadays, the other thing that you have to do, and is all about education, is not your keys, not your coins, right? So it's about educating people that the first step is moving away or trying to find a lifeline to protect their own savings. That is what they are doing in USDT. And hopefully with all the efforts, with conferences like this, with education, we as Bitfinex and Tether, we are doing a ton of events. We are investing a ton in bringing students together, in teaching to teachers. So because although I run an exchange, what we are seeing that 50% of the assets on an exchange are not used for active trading. So that is a bad practice, and we are trying our best to teach to our users that is not the right thing to do. It will, if you keep your Bitcoins on an exchange, that is basically failing the entire purpose of Bitcoin. And with Tethers, you have two issues, right? So Tether is centralized, so we are subject to the laws of the world, right? So we are using the banking system. And the second one is that, as you might say, most of people keep their Tethers on exchanges. So we cannot guarantee for the solvency of exchanges as we are seeing with FTX. So it's about, so it would be better for people to take out the USDT in their own custody. Self-custody is always the best thing. The other best, the ultimate goal is to use Bitcoin.
Not your keys, not your coin.
All right, well, I guess I hope everybody found this educational. Paolo, Sam, Nicholas, thanks for coming on for this.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Rock and roll. Thanks, you guys. Great. Good job. Good job. Way to go. Way to go. Way to go.